Good morning, Jack. It's me again. Just Holly. It's May 29th at 8:11 a.m. It's finally nice outside. I know I don't trust it either. The sky's pale blue. It's a pretty color. I think I'll paint my nails to match it. The sun keeps coming through in these thin little strips between the clouds and the trees, and the porch boards are finally dry. Well, mostly dry. Damp in the cracks still. The kind of damp that makes you appreciate the dry breeze blowing through. I slept in later than I meant to. Not because I slept well, just because I don't have work today, and my body took advantage of that in the absolute rudest way possible by keeping me under. I don't feel rested, though, just a bit delayed. I didn't have any dreams last night. None that I remember. But my ankles still ache. Not as bad as yesterday, or the day before, but enough that I noticed them the second I let my feet touch the ground. That dull, bruised feeling still in there, tucked in deep into my flesh. I haven't looked at them yet today. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm worried that if they look worse, I'll have to admit to something I'm not really sure I want to yet. And if they look better, then I'll feel stupid for how much space I've been giving them in my head, and wonder how many other thoughts I could have had if the spaces of my brain weren't occupied with the nonsense. So for now, they exist in that pleasant middle ground where I can still lie to myself. Anka was on the porch this morning when I opened the door. Just sitting there in the sun, his dark fur looked almost brown in it. And the penny is still there too. The same spot as yesterday, right where the bird had been before that, dull and dark and tails up, which I still don't care for. I know I said I don't believe in luck, and I don't. Anka was closer to the door this time. I held my hand out, and he looked at me for so long I almost got embarrassed, like he saw I was hesitant, and what kind of person is shy with a cat. Then he stepped forward and pressed his face right into my fingers. And Jack, he let me pet him. Properly, I mean. The top of his little head between the ears, then down the back of his neck where his fur got thicker. He felt warm from the sun. He leaned into it, and I sort of let myself think that he probably enjoyed this. He purred. Not delicate either. It was loud and deep. It sounded like a tiny engine starting up in his rib cage. It was nice. Probably the nicest thing that's happened all week. That's a sad thought, and that's a bit dramatic. Ignore that. He kept purring, but he still wouldn't come inside. He stood with his tiny front paws near the threshold, and that was it. He decided exactly where the line was, and I wasn't going to be the one to move it. I made coffee, and I stood at the sink with the window open a crack. The air smells different today. Not a rainy smell anymore, a warm smell. It was a crisp pine and dust and that green smell that things get when they've been soaked long enough and finally get a little sun and heat. I should probably go out and enjoy it while it lasts. I'm going to go down to the river for a little while. No, not because I'm obsessed. I'm not obsessed, Jack. Just because I'd like to know whether that cloth is still there, that's all. And if I happen to prove to myself that I'm not losing my mind, that would be a little bit of a bonus. I'll talk to you later, Jack. Jack, it's 10:03 a.m. I feel ridiculous. The river looks completely normal. The water's lower than it was, and you can see more of the bank now, all the fresh mud and the old roots and stones, all the little bones of the river showing through. There's sunlight hitting the surface in places and making it look shallow and harmless, in that lying way that water seems to have. The branch where the cloth had been caught is gone, broken off. There's nothing there now. Nothing purple, nothing dark and wet, no black lace. Nothing. I walked up close enough to see where the branch had broken off, and it looked like nothing weird, but it felt weird, you know. I stood there longer than I needed to, Jack. I checked farther down, into the reeds and along the bank, half expecting to see the cloth washed up somewhere quieter. There was nothing. That should make me feel better, shouldn't it? It should, right? If I were sensible, this would be the end of it. The cloth is gone because there was a cloth, and River carries things away like cloths stuck on branches. Or maybe there was nothing ever there, and my brain has just been stitching together vile dream logic and reality. I feel almost corrected. Like the river let me come all the way out here just to show me how ordinary it can look when it wants to. There weren't even any horrible feelings of being watched. There was no smell like pennies, no low fog clinging to the trees, just birds and water, and the occasional little insect skimming the surface. Everything was far too normal, and I'm certain of that. I'm not saying that to convince myself. I really mean it. There is nothing there, Jack. Nothing at all. And it feels worse. I'm going to head over to Rosemary's place. No one's heard from her, and maybe she's fine, and maybe I'm just being nosy, but I'd rather be nosy than sit alone in my cabin imagining her, well, not being her anymore. I'll talk to you later. It's 11:27 a.m. now, Jack. Rosemary didn't answer her door. I knocked 3 times, then a 4th, because sometimes 3 knocks feels too polite, and if someone's asleep or in the back room, or pretending to not really be there because they look awful, then 4 knocks feels a little more demanding. But still nothing. Her curtains were drawn in the front window, blocking out any chance of seeing inside. And her car's still there. The dirt and the gravel around the tires seemed settled. The car clearly hadn't been moved since the rain, which I really didn't like. I don't know what I would have preferred exactly. If the car was gone, I think she left in a hurry. But the car is still there, and now I think she's inside. You can't really win with that sort of thinking. There were 2 circular water stains on the porch railing, where somebody had set down drinks at some point. I stared at those. It felt oddly intimate to see. Little pieces of evidence of Rosemary's life, an existence that proved itself in a subtle way. I almost checked the back of the house, but I didn't. It felt a little bit too overstepping. But maybe I should be overstepping. Crossing boundaries is a strange thing when you're worried about someone. So I just stood there with my hands in my jacket pockets, feeling stupid and nosy. Maybe she's with family and they came to pick her up. Maybe she heard me knocking and decided she didn't feel like speaking to anyone, which, honestly, I get it. Frederick's stupid line from yesterday is stuck in my head, Jack. People never go missing, they just start being somewhere else. I hate it when people say things like that and then go right back to flipping pancakes. Feels inconsiderate. I was about to head home, but then I remembered something. I remembered Dennis calling me this morning, as I was heading out the door to the river. He asked me if I could bring him a coffee while I was out today. Said he was already elbow deep in a truck and hadn't had the time to run over to the diner. He sounded tired and a little amused. His tone sounded like he was worried he was imposing on me, but he knew I would do it anyway. So I did. I stopped and I got him a coffee. I've got it sitting in the cup holder now, and I just realized as I said that to you out loud that my phone is still unplugged. The landline, I mean. I never plugged it back in last night. So, that's funny. That's funny, right? That's not horrifying, right, Jack? I'm sure there's a simple explanation for that. I'm sure I'm about to think of it any second now. I'm gonna go see Dennis. I'll talk to you later, Jack. It's 1:16 p.m., Jack, and I'm sitting in my car outside of the repair shop because I wanted a minute before I drove. I brought him the coffee, and Dennis was so happy to see me that for a second I forgot I was frightened or worried about anything. He was out front when I pulled up, rolling the big garage door open the rest of the way with one hand. The sun was behind him, and there was grease on his knuckles and along one forearm. He had that dark green work shirt on, the one with his name stitched over the pocket, and his sleeves were pushed up. He smiled the second he saw me. Not a polite smile, not a customer smile, a real one, all toothy and sweet. And he said, "Well, that's the prettiest delivery I've had all month," which is a terrible line, but I liked it anyway. I told him not to get used to it, but to be honest, I wouldn't mind if he did get used to it, and called me any chance he got to ask me to bring him coffee. He took the paper-to-go cup from me, and his fingers brushed against mine, just enough that I knew it was deliberate. He asked me if I wanted to come inside for a minute. Of course I did. I always do. It smelt like oil and hot metal and old rubber in there, which should be unpleasant, but somehow never is. Maybe because I associate the scent with him. There was a radio on in the back, playing softly enough that it kept disappearing under the sound of tools clinking around. He set the coffee on the desk in the office and looked at me in that quiet way he does sometimes, like there's a whole extra conversation happening behind his face and I only get every other fourth word of it. I said something about him sounding tired on the phone, and he just looked at me. Not a blank stare, but a confused one. So I smiled a little and said, "This morning, when you called and asked me for coffee, remember?" And he said, "Holly, I didn't call you." Just like that. No theatrics, no strange tone, no grin. He wasn't waiting for some joke to sneak up underneath it all. Just confusion. I laughed, not because it was funny. It was one of those stupid little laughs that your body forces out when it wants to open a door and run through to escape when reality was setting in. I told him you absolutely did call me. He leaned one shoulder against the wall and said, "I've been here since 7. I haven't touched the phone once." And then he lifted the cup a little and said, "Not that I'm complaining that you came by, though." I didn't know what to say to that, Jack, 'cause he didn't seem like he was lying, and that's the awful part. If he had smirked, or if he'd looked too pleased with himself, if there had even been a little hint that he was messing with me, I could have hated him for it and gone home, and that would have been that. But he just seemed genuinely puzzled. And I knew, Jack, that my phone is still unplugged at home. I could picture the cord hanging beside the table while he was standing there in front of me saying he hadn't called. I must have gone quiet for too long because he stepped closer and asked if I was all right. I said yes, which obviously was a lie, and he touched my arm just above the elbow. Nothing dramatic, and honestly it was barely even a touch. But it felt like too much and not enough, and like if he had left his hand there for another second, I might have done something embarrassing and selfish. I asked how things at the shop were going. He just gave me this little shrug and said, "Busy enough to keep me from thinking too hard." I said that sounded healthy, and he laughed at that. And then I asked about Lila. I didn't mean to. It came out because there was a pause, and I wanted to fill it with something normal, something that would make me feel like I was standing on level ground again. So I said, "How is she?" And he looked past me for a second, not away from me exactly, just through the doorway, out into the garage where the light was the brightest. And then he said, "She's not much for company lately." That was all. No smile when he said it, no elaborating, just that. I don't know why it bothered me as much as it did Jack. Maybe because it's such a strange way to answer an even stranger question from your almost mistress. Maybe because there was no irritation in it and no affection either. Just this flat little tiredness. I noticed there was a mug on the shelf in the office. A woman's mug, probably. It was white, with faded blue flowers around the rim. There was lipstick on it once, I think. You can see the faint old stain where it hadn't quite been washed clean all the way. It looked like I had been sitting there a while. There was dust on the handle. I kept looking at it while he talked. I don't know if it belongs to her. I don't know why I decided it did, though. Maybe I'm cruel. Maybe I just wanted there to be something in the room with us that would remind me I'm not a good person. To remind me I don't have the right to stand in a married man's office and be the one to bring him coffee and hope I was making his day better enough that he would think about me when he was falling asleep tonight. Anyway, he touched my wrist when I turned to go, and I stopped. I looked at him, and then everything after that was not an accident. He kissed me. Or maybe I kissed him first. It wasn't long, and it wasn't dramatic. No one came in and no one saw. But it happened, right there in the office, with the door half open and the sunlight slanting in and the smell of coffee and motor oil between us. Afterward, he leaned his forehead against mine for just a second, and I hated how much I wanted to stay right there. And that's the truth of it. I'm going home now. I feel strange, and not because of him, well, not only because of him. I'll talk to you later. Jack, it's 6:42 p.m. and I'm home now. The weather held all day and it's still light out. There's gold along the horizon now between the trees. Anka was still on the porch when I got back, curled in the exact same spot by the door like he hadn't moved all afternoon, and the penny was still there too. I sat down on the top step beside him, not too close, just enough that our shadows touched. He looked up at me once, slow and serious, and then he climbed into my lap, as if this was a normal thing for us. And then I nearly cried over a cat, which is humiliating. I don't know why I suddenly felt so emotional. He purred again, loud as before, maybe even louder. I could feel it against my stomach, a tiny, steady vibration. I had gotten up, and he ran off. I walked inside, and sure enough, the phone is still unplugged, Jack. I checked the moment I stepped in, the cord hanging loose exactly where I left it. This is stupid. This is dramatic. Did I imagine the phone call, Jack? And the river was normal today. And that's what keeps bothering me the most, not the call, not Rosemary not answering her door, not even Dennis saying he never phoned my cabin. It's the river. 'Cause there was nothing there, Jack. Nothing. No cloth, no proof, no reason for me to still feel tied to that bend in the bank like part of me got snagged there and pulled under by a bloated and pale hand. And if it was all in my head, then my head is doing things I don't know how to stop. And if it wasn't... Jack, I hear something on my porch. Oh God, it's way too heavy to be Anka. I think I'm gonna lock the door. That's sensible. That's all that is. I'll lock the door and I'll ignore the dragging sound because, Jack, what if it's really not there? I'll talk to you later.